Hello, everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea. My name is Kathy, and I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager for HTA, and I get to be your host today. Today's episode is sponsored by Grace Tully. Grace, we are so appreciative of you stepping up and sponsoring this. It's going to be a fun episode today. We will take questions, as always, the last 15 minutes of the hour. Please put them in Q&A and not in chat. Love your chats. Keep those in, but I can't see the questions if they're in the Q&A. Today's guest is the one, the only, Daryl Lancaster. Daryl is a hand weaver and a fiber artist known for her award-winning hand-woven fabrics and garments, especially her garments. She's been constructing garments for more than a half a century. She has given lectures, workshops to guilds, conferences, craft centers all over the United States. The former features editor for Handwoven Magazine, she has written more than 100 articles and published digital content, frequently contributes to various extant weaving and sewing publications, including Threads Magazine. She now has a YouTube channel, The Weaver Sews, where she shares her extensive and experienced weaving hand-woven garments. Hello, Daryl.
Hi.
Welcome.
It is so cool to be here.
Oh, we love having you here.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. So let's get started. What is your favorite tea?
I have wanted to answer this question. You have no idea for how long. And it's not very complicated. I like red rose tea. I mourn that the little Wade figurines are not in the boxes anymore, but it's just plain black tea. And my favorite mug, it's a Jason Silverman mug. These walk around the house with me all day long. You know, I'll say, where's my mug and where's my phone? Because they're usually together. And local honey. I have the bees that are around my area. I know the beekeeper and I get local honey.
So who'd you say make that? Who makes that?
Jason Silverman. I found him at a craft gallery. COVID killed that gallery, but I found him in Annapolis Pottery in Maryland. And, you know, spent a lot of time looking anyway.
All right.
So isn't that beautiful?
Shout out to Jason.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I want a mug that holds a lot of tea because I walk around with it all day. Anyway.
That's great.
Jason's about to get a lot of orders. Yeah,
that's right. So tell us how you got started in Fiverr.
It was a really interesting path. In the beginning, everybody, you know, I knitted, needlework, typical stuff. But my mom was an expert tailor. She made all our household textiles, clothes that we wore, interior furnishings. And when I was 10, she decided it was time for me to learn to sew. And my younger sister, she was 8. And so she set out to teach us. And that was good. And I embraced it immediately. But she also began to teach tailoring at the local adult school. So she would come home with her little purple mimeographed handouts and hand them to me and say, can you follow this? And so by the time I was 13 years old, 14, I mean, I was tailoring garments, I mean, serious coats. And then it just happened that, you know, people started asking my mom, you know, can you hem this? She goes, no, but my daughter will. And, you know, all of a sudden I had this dressmaking business. And I remember babysitting. And I was working on putting embellishments on skating costumes for this girl who was a local ice skater. And I thought that was so cool to be getting babysitting money while I was also getting money to sew. And then when it was time to go to college, it was a dilemma because this was the 70s. It wasn't expected to send your daughters to college. My parents were pretty progressive. It was assumed that one of the reasons to send me was to broaden my prospects for a husband that wasn't local. And so they said they didn't care what I wanted to study, but my dad really wanted me to go in business. And I said, Dad, I don't want to go into business. And then the other thing was, well, you're going to teach, right? Oh God, no, I never wanted to teach. You know, the irony there does not escape me.
Yes, that's good.
And so I want as far away as I could go from home, which in New Jersey, you know, which is a peanut of a state, ended up being North Jersey, which is Montclair State, was the furthest college in the state I could go from home. They had a great art department. It was right outside New York City. And I took, you know, painting and drawing and photography and clay. And then I found the textile studio. And it was my home until they kicked me out because I graduated. And I loved everything about it. It was a language I already spoke. I learned to weave. I learned to spin. And sidebar is that I met a guy at a party at college. He was already gainfully employed. And I ended up marrying him. His mother was a master spinner and bobbin lace maker. So, I mean, I completely fell in this path, but I embraced it with everything I had. People will say to me, well, what are you going to do with this? Oh, I had no idea. I mean, my entire life, I have no idea. I just do. And it works.
Well, two questions. One question. Is there still a program at that school?
No. Almost every college in New Jersey, I mean, they're all gone. Patterson's looms all went to Peters Valley. I don't know what Montclair did with their looms, but they're all gone, and it's sad. I actually taught there. I actually had to fill in as an adjunct, and I actually taught there a couple of semesters. But I was an adjunct. You can't teach more than so many semester hours, and it was really cool to be back where I started.
I bet. Mm-hmm. Well, this first image that we're going to show of one of your works, the inspiration for this was a puzzle that you were putting together, which I think is amazing. And it looks like we got 3 images here. So can you talk some about how this all came into being?
Right. So I've always been, it was just something from childhood. I've always been a puzzle fanatic. I mean, there's always a 1,000-piece puzzle sitting on the table, and it's very social. My daughter and I will sit and work on it. I will work on it. I'll have wine and work on it. So this particular series, which my daughter bought, it's called Magic Puzzle Company. And this one was called the Busy Bistro. And as we're putting this together, they give you a big poster. So it's busy, but the color relationships were so exquisite. And I was haunted by it. And I kept the poster out. And I went to my dyed wall of yarn. And if you can see behind me, I've got like all this cabinet of all the reds, and on the back side, the black cabinet is all the cool colors. But I dye yarn all winter long just because I like to. And I have no purpose for it, but I just started pulling yarns that gave the impression of or referenced this color story. And then because I like to combine structures with those yarns, I mean, I worked on how this fabric was going to go together for a couple of months and what structures I was going to put. This is 12 shaft, just because that was the loom that was free. Available. I don't mean free, available at the point. And that loom is like right behind me. The fabric is still on the loom because I had an unfortunate physical issue. I can only weave about 15 inches a day, but that's 15 inches a day. So I'm really, I'm moving on it, and I'm psyched. And it's an inspiration to work on, because I was fixing a puzzle.
What else inspires you? I mean, it sounds like whatever you see, or
right. So here's the thing that surprises people. If you went through my website and you looked at all the work I have, there's not a single thing in there that was ever planned, because each of the things that we do as weavers and craftsmen actually are a series of processes. And each of those processes for me stands completely alone. So when it's January and I like to dye yarns, I just make a bunch of skeins. I pick a color off the shelf. I dump it in and see what I get, process. Next day I do it again. So I just amass this stuff. I buy when the opportunity comes, or there's an estate sale or something. And so I acquire raw materials. When I weave, it's because I like to weave. And the goal of my weaving is another raw material. I have no plans for it. I take raw material and convert it to a different raw material. I don't make scarves. I might make dish towels for gifts, but I don't, as a rule, ever plan what I'm doing. It's just yardage. It comes off, it gets processed, rolled on the shelf, and then it's a thing to sew. And so, pun intended. Right. And so even if you look at this piece on the form that's over here, ow, my shoulder doesn't do that. Yeah, this piece over here. Oh. So That was, I took a Jennifer Moore rainbow double weave workshop with my guild. I know how to do double weave, but I like to take workshops. Great workshop, by the way. And she does it completely remote. It's fabulous. But I had 4 yards of 48 to the inch tencel, which I chose to use because I had it. And that work went on endlessly. And so, with this fractured shoulder that I did at the end of December, I could only weave with one hand, and it was 2 shuttles, but fortunately the shuttles were wider than what I was weaving. But I had this really long thing by the end of January that I had no idea what I was going to do with. And I kept thinking, okay, everything I do turns into clothing. It's what I'm programmed to do. And so I got this brilliant idea to do these windows. This is a sleeve. So I just used pieces of it. And then there's a second layer behind it. So this is a double reverse applique on both sides, almost all done by hand. So the garment will technically be completely reversible. And I just, I just think it's always thinking. Now I have a wardrobe that I could wear a gorgeous hand-woven outfit every day for the next 5 years and never duplicate. But I don't care about that. The end product is really irrelevant to me. It is how to get from my idea in the head, ooh, I wonder what I could do. And I will just say this. This is sort of my philosophy. Mm-hmm. Everybody's heard this. Because you can is not a reason. But to see if you can is actually what powers pretty much everything I do. I wonder if I could do this. And then I am absolutely bound determined to find a way.
Well, you keep mentioning your shoulder. How is it?
So at the end of, right before Christmas, actually, 4 days before Christmas, I ended up in the ER. I tripped and fell over a curb walking home in the dark. Stupid me. I know the curb is there. It was at the end of my street. And I fractured the ball of my shoulder in 2 places. It hurt. It was bad. It was really bad. And because it happened right at Christmas and the week between Christmas and New Year's, and I couldn't get appointments and scan, I kind of missed my window of opportunity for surgery. So it had already started to fuse, and it's what I have to work with. And so as a weaver, as a creative person, this was huge, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And yet, because my entire life is built on, let me see if I can, I was determined. I mean, the 2 mornings after I broke it, I got up and I was like, let me see if I can make bacon and eggs with one arm. I mean, this arm for 5 weeks was strapped tight into my chest wall. I couldn't move it because of the severity of the breaks. But I made bacon and eggs with one arm. So then I took that to, what else? What can I do? And we were in the middle of shooting a 4-part series for my YouTube channel, and it was on piecing. It was a piecing technique. And I was like, I don't want to stop this. Can I do this? And so I made this dress, that I was able to finish it, for this. It's all pieced, but this was for the YouTube series. But I said, okay, so the machine, I pulled the table off. I pulled it as close as I could to me. I had one good arm and a couple of fingers, and I did it, and it's the personal pride of, I did this in spite of everything that was happening around me, that, nobody has to know. No, I don't care if anybody knows. I mean, I wrote a blog post about it, but the blog posts for me, and I've been blogging for 14 years, are just a personal journal. I don't really care if anybody reads them. It was like the journal I used to write, but I could put pictures in it.
Well, I want to look some more at your work.
Okay.
This next coat, you made it in 2005.
Uh-huh.
I fell in love with it when I saw it. It's called the Peacock Fantasy. Yes. It's truly amazing. Tell us the story of this very unique piece.
Very unique. Okay. So, and this one has a story. Coincidentally.
Of course it does.
Huh?
Of course it does.
I've got everything in my life has. I'm a storyteller. So coincidentally, last night I was teaching in Michigan, obviously remotely, and somebody mentioned this piece, and I was like, well, interesting that this piece gets mentioned because it's going to be on Textiles Tea. All right. So back in 2005, I am the keynote speaker and judge of the fashion show for the Midwest Weavers Conference in Sheboygan. And someone from the committee called me about 2 months before that's my recollection. It's a long time ago. About 2 months before the actual event, and said, we got this brilliant idea. As the judge, could you put in 2 like really wow runway finale pieces at the end of the fashion show? And I was like, oh crap. Like I didn't have runway.
Sure, 2 months,
right.
No problem.
Sure. And so just as a little backstory, because I was a production hand weaver and did craft fairs for 10 years selling hand woven clothing, I would do 30-yard runs of fabric at a time. I mean, I sat down and I could weave off 30 yards in a sitting because I was young and, 20s and in good shape. And then anything that was left over from cutting out all those pieces that I would then sell at craft fairs got stored and labeled and carefully put in the attic. I had an attic full of 10 years worth of hand woven scraps. So when I had the opportunity to create 2 finale pieces, there are 2 pieces actually. This one on the cocoon coat that should be near it on my website when you go to look. And also, so I went into the attic and I said, what do I have a lot of that I could whip up a finale piece? And I used to, when I would do a 30-yard run, I might have 3 different wefts. So it might be a mohair one, there might be a variegated, there might be a plain. So I had different shades that all went together, all off the same warp. And I started playing. What do I have a lot of? I could do the bodice, wait, these little pieces all look like peacock feathers. And it just sort of came into being. And then I was at the fashion show. It was apparently well received, along with this cocoon coat, which was white mohair, all pieced. So fast forward, either the next year or whatever, there was a surface design conference fashion show that both of these pieces appeared in. And I wasn't there, but when I saw, there was a link to some publicity thing that a newspaper wrote, and they had a photo of this piece on some shirtless, gorgeous hunk of a model going down the runway. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I wrote to the paper and asked if I could get permission to use that. And they said, well, of course, but it'll cost you some hundreds of dollars. And I was like, but I'm just the artist. They're like, well, we don't care. That's what we charge. I'm thinking, I think my husband showed me how to do a screenshot. I somewhere have the image, but I can't use it. But it was pretty cool. Fast forward a couple of other years, my son did a stint as a musical theater major in community college before he went into the military. And he was part of a show called, I think it was Once on This Island. And they had, the god of earth, the god of water, the god of air, whatever. And I got called in, of course, Mom, they need help costuming. Oh, wonderful. So I was there and we're talking about this really tall, good looking guy who's the god of water. And I thought, I'll bet he'll fit in that thing. So I bring this thing in and he's like, oh my God. And everybody's like, oh my God. And so this is what this character wore for the show. And when I gave it to him and I said, this is a $10,000 work of art. Do not mess with it. So that piece, and it's sitting in the back of my closet. I've often thought that I should just cut it up and make something else because I'm obviously not using it. I do that all the time. I cut things up because it's sitting in the back of my closet. It's another raw material.
All right. Well, you have a lot of flexibility in what you make. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking through all your things and like, here's a great example is that we've got these 2 coats. They're felted coats. One is called Winter Landscape and the other one's called Stepping Stone. So can you talk some about your approach to choosing your techniques and that being flexible with that?
And again, there's a really interesting story. So the coat on the left, the purpley red one, so I teach, obviously I traveled around the country teaching garment construction and felters would take my workshops. There is a very big difference in how you use felted fabric in construction than there is in hand woven. And the real joy of felted fabric, especially if you make panels, is that there's this natural organic edge that you can make use of. You don't need hems, you don't need facings. So I wanted to make my basic jacket used in my workshops out of felt to help felters understand what the goals are here. So I will tell you that piece, I went kicking and screaming the whole way. I know how to felt. I have this degree in textiles, but I don't I don't like to felt. It's hard work, just rolling and roll. I would rather thread 4,000 ends of hand weaving, of a warp than stand there for days rolling and rolling. I probably spent a couple of years, and I had an intern from the local community college that helped me finish the actual felting process. And then it was super fun because I love developing ways to put this together to really celebrate the cloth. So that piece happened because I needed a felted Daryl jacket, and that's the only reason I did. I know how to do these processes. It's not necessarily what I love. The piece on the right is interesting that you pulled that. So when my beloved mother-in-law died, I mean, she was 99 years old. I was with her when she died. She was just my best friend through all of adulthood. And when she died, of course, I cleaned out her apartment and things. And every time I opened a box, it was another Romney fleece. She was a spinner. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with all of these Romney fleeces? And so I ended up taking a casserole dish, and I had a bunch of Cushing dies that somebody had given me. They're the ones in the little packet. And I would put enough fleece, kind of in a baggie and work it until it was kind of felted. And then I would put it in this casserole dish and sprinkle the dye on it and microwave it. So I ended up with all of these pieces, just desperate to use up all this Romney fleece. So at that point, I don't remember how old my daughter was. I don't remember the date on this piece. Well, it would have been after my mother-in-law died. So, she was young. And I was sitting there looking at all these things. And I was like, okay, we're going to make a jacket out of this. And I said, Brianna, this is a giant puzzle. Put these all together. So she started assembling. And then it was my job to get them to all fit together and work together. And so this was a piece. So fast forward, I was teaching at a felting conference, and I brought this piece along. And all of the felters kind of kept looking at it, and they'd pick it up and they'd look oddly at it. And then finally I asked was it Sharon Carstello was the felter who was in charge of the conference. I said, Sharon, what is it with this? And she said, did you use Romney? I was like, well, yeah, because that's what I had. I go, why? What should I have used? She goes, Daryl, merino. Felters use merino. And I was like, what? Who knew? Who knew?
Oh, that's great.
I know everything has a story, and so yes, it doesn't start out that way. It happens because it's there.
Well, you have embraced technology. I mean, you're on YouTube, you do your digital patterns, you do videos, you do Zoom classes. Yeah. So what was it like for you to tackle that whole aspect? Especially when COVID hit, but you started before COVID.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I will tell you, like, felting, kicking and screaming. So the sewing machine gods and I are joined at the hip. I mean, I have genuflect daily. We have great relationships. Same thing with the looms, but the computer gods do not like me. And I will say that from the beginning, but I was married to a super techie, and he loved being able to take my business and make technical, digital things. And it was always our goal when he retired that I would like to transfer a lot of this information digitally. So I remember back when AOL was the only game in town and you still had dial-up, and AOL started offering this ability to have a personal website. So he was determined that I was going to have this personal website for my business. And so I remember his office was in our bedroom, and I remember him working on this, and I went to bed. And then all of a sudden he starts yelling about 1 o'clock in the morning, I did it. And I'm thinking, oh no, what did you do? And he said to me, you have a website, millions of people could find you. And I'm like, I don't want millions of people to find me. So he was the one that first got, me working on this. And when Sign Mitchell had a brief column on in Handwoven Magazine on technology, and she was really encouraging weavers to embrace it and to start blogging so people could find out about what we do. And I read the column, and I went on eBlogger because she had, I guess, recommended it, and I figured it out. And I pushed, and I was like, oh wow, I was already journaling. But I thought this is cool because I could just type the journal and add pictures. And so I showed my husband what I did after like 2 posts, and he goes, oh no, you don't want to use eBlog. You want to use WordPress. And I'm like, oh. And so he opened a WordPress account, transferred everything over, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. But fast forward, when COVID hit, there were a number of coincidental things that happened. And one was that when I teach, everything I do is on PowerPoint. So it was so easy to just hit share screen and it pops right up. And it's no different. I know how to teach in front of a camera. I know how to teach with no audience, but I was able to really embrace that. However, you know, I had at that point, my daughter, I had hired her for unrelated reasons. I needed help. She was sick. She needed a job. It was just, there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was completely coincidental. So when COVID hit, and of course, everything was going to Zoom and people were trying to figure this all out, my webcam died. I didn't really even have sufficient equipment. And there wasn't a Logitech webcam for 300 miles. So I ended up, and of course my husband died. So like all of that, you know, future of what I wanted to do died with him. So I hired the local, there's a really high-end camera store not far from me. And I called them and I said, can I hire somebody who will be masked, you know, with gloves and the whole thing? And they said, sure. And I worked with this guy one-on-one, and he basically set me up with what I said, you know, and we're thinking about maybe doing videos. So is there a camera that could work as a webcam and video? And that's what I'm working on now. This is a Canon SLR, and we have a pair of them. So I spent a lot of money on equipment to do the job. Meanwhile, I have this daughter on my payroll. We're not teaching. There's nothing happening. And I said, here's a class online, learn how to use Adobe Illustrator. Okay. And so she has the same mind as my husband. That same curiosity. And I almost feel like he said, okay, I'm not there for you, but I'm giving you our daughter to get you through this. So when she got all the patterns digitized and available, and then I said, well, let's try videos. I will tell you, the first one we shot, we never used, you know, and she said to me, Mom, we're going to script this. I want to know everything you're about to say, and I want it planned. I'm like, okay, fine. So each video takes us about 20 hours. And I will tell you right up front, I earn nothing from this YouTube channel. You know, it's not monetized. That wasn't the goal. I would need a couple million followers to make it worth my while. But I did this as a gift back to the support that I've had over all these years, because I don't want to teach it anymore. It's there. Have at it. Enjoy it. You know, and if you can learn from it, great. And it's really fun to see something pop up on social media. Hi, look what I did. And everybody's like, ooh, yeah, it was one of Daryl Lancaster's patterns, and I followed her YouTube channel. And I'm like, bless you. Thank you. You know, because that's the point.
Well, the relationship between the last few questions I've been asking is that you come across, or at least I see you as fearless. You have this fearlessness that you did the digital, you know, you explore different possibilities in your work. And even as a kid, you were brave enough to start an alteration business at the age of 15. I don't even want to think about what I was doing at the age of 15. Okay, everybody go, aw. And there she is in her outfit.
Yeah.
So there's so many examples of you just kind of jumping in and just seeing where you land. So is this, do you ever second guess yourself, or are you beyond that now?
I don't second guess myself, and I have no regrets, because I've learned a long time ago that whatever decision you make in the moment is based on the information you have and the ability to want to move forward. You know, how it turns out is a different thing than what your intent was. And so I won't say it's, thank you. I appreciate that fearlessness thing, but that's really not it. It is a blind determination and stubbornness that there has to be a way. Same thing when I broke my shoulder. There has to be a way. And maybe I'm too stupid to, you know, that I don't see it initially, but there has to be a way. And so I am really more about trying to make it work. And so when this opportunity came, you know, my mom said this, you know, this person in town wants a dress made or wants her pants hemmed, you know, are you willing to do it? I was like, sure. you know what, she was there. I mean, I trusted that my mom would, you know, be there if I had a question. And it was, you know, and it was the perfect thing because I could do simple alterations. I could do them easily. And when I started doing craft fairs, you know, I started actually as a production weaver for somebody else. And I went to this thing and I had a loom. So I didn't know what a production weaver was, but, you know, somebody was just too stupid to know otherwise. And, you know, they said, well, this is what we're working on. And can you do this? They handed me a scarf warp, which I went home that night and did. And then, you know, the next day they're like, okay, you're hired. And my first job with them was 30 yards of mohair, maximum width on my loom. I had no freaking idea. So I used to have a sign on my door when I, you know, the old studio all through from my production years that said, say yes, then worry. Because I knew I'd figure it out. I knew I'd find a way. I mean, I often think that Google makes us kind of stupid in that we have the entire world at our fingertips and yet we don't look inward. Like I want to say sometimes when I see something on social media, I think, did you crawl under the loom and look up? You know, did you go underneath? Did you see how it works? I mean, it is so imperative that we learn to trust our instincts and to find our own way, because you develop stuff that maybe nobody else has thought of. You know, and even sewing hand woven fabric, I didn't know any better. I was a tailor. And so I way over engineered the first few things I did, but then you learn and you see what works and what doesn't. And if I don't learn something from each piece I do or each process that I do, then I was just kind of, you know, doing something I already did. I mean, it's really about the learning and that pathway.
Well, I meant to ask this earlier, which is, if somebody comes up to you and says, what do? Do you immediately think of yourself as a tailor or a weaver?
Actually, neither. So, you know, this whole art craft thing is, you know, and I will just say, first of all, that art is a form of communication. I have a degree in it, and it is a way of creating something that is a dialogue between you, the maker, and the viewer. It could be using any medium from words to video to dance to, you know, to something tangible, paint, clay, fiber. But art usually has a narrative and there's a dialogue involved. So that said, I also spent 10 years as a fine craftsman. I doing craft fairs. I hung with the craftsmen. I mean, there were blacksmiths and potters and jewelers. And to me, a craftsman is someone who spends a lifetime learning technique, melding that with medium and process. And what you make is not relevant. It's that process. So a craftsmanship is about process. And that's really what defines me. I would say to somebody, I wouldn't say that I'm a seamstress or a tailor, because the first thing you get asked is, oh, I have a pair of pants to hem. Can you do that? Yeah, no. We did alterations at 15. I'm not going back there. And so I consider myself a fine craftsman. I happen to work in fiber, but more importantly, a master craftsman. I've spent 50 years developing this, you know, and I think that I know what I'm doing. And so I consider myself a master craftsman in fiber. And I think that I'm happy with that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I was also struck when I read somewhere, excuse me, where you were checking out an online program and you actually signed up and went through the program to see, because you had beginning weavers who were looking for that beginning instruction. And that's not where you focus. You focus right. more on further down the road. But I was just so struck by your desire to make sure that you were recommending something for your little baby weavers that was, you know, quality. And then you recommended another teacher rather than saying, oh, I can do that. You recommended another teacher. And I guess these actions just, to me, are someone who has taken on the responsibility of future weavers. There's just this, you know, you have kind of a protectedness or sense of responsibility for these future weavers.
I do.
Do you agree with that, or?
You know, yeah. And even, I don't want to teach like people have said, can you do videos on your weaving process? No, because there's a lot of weavers out there who are trying to monetize or make a living at this. I don't care anymore. I mean, I've done my thing. Here's the information. Do what you want with it. But I have a lot of people who say to me, who is good or not, but who teaches what, and is it something that will work for me? And I can say, here's a list of stuff, but if I don't honestly know or haven't sat in on it, I can't really give the bigger picture. And I'm not a one-word answer if you haven't figured that out. But there's actually an ulterior motive to when I sign up, when I take workshops with other teachers. I've been teaching for a long time, but I didn't always teach. You remember, I didn't want to teach,
Yeah.
And it is by taking other workshops that I learn how a teacher handles a class, how they disseminate really technical information, how they keep control, how they pace a class. All of these things I have learned from the best and I have learned from the worst. I have taken some classes that were just painful because it's like, you have no class control. You have no idea what you're doing. And yet we all started there. My first class, somebody asked me to teach tailoring for hand weaving, and they were all in tears. I had to go back 3 more times before they could get to their project. I had no idea how to pace a class, and those are the kinds of things that I think it's important as a teacher. Again, because you can isn't a reason. You got to learn the art of teaching and patience and dealing with all different people who are all different cognitive abilities and ages, and you have to be incredibly patient. And I even saw this with craft fairs. And even at the end of my 10 years of as a craftsman, I was starting to get impatient. If one more person said, how long does it take? I wanted to smack them. And you can't ever be in that position. It was time to move on. And so it's always been, I would love to be able to hand people off onto other people. Who's teaching garment construction out there? I don't know, but here's my stuff. If they can use it, have at it. Here's my patterns. If they can use and help you with them, have at it. I've got a couple of guilds actually that are forming study groups that are, each person in the group is getting one of my patterns and making all of the samples in all the sizes. So they have this library of Daryl's patterns in all different sizes to help them move forward. And I'm like, wow. And they ask permission. I'm like, oh, you don't need permission. Have at it. So
you're generous. You're incredibly generous.
But people were generous with me. I mean, this is about passing on to new generations. I don't want it to die with me. Look, I lost my husband when he was about to retire. A lot died with him. His work, he was a global consultant in communications. There's a lot that died with him. His company was devastated. I didn't want that to happen. I know so much, and I just want to be able to leave it.
Well, I have to tell you, I was a little worried about this interview because you're so well known. Everybody has, not everybody, but a lot of people have taken your workshops. The fortunate ones have taken your workshops. You're on YouTube, you've been interviewed, you've been on podcasts. So I'm like, what can I possibly ask you that you haven't been asked 1,000 times? So I thought, I'm going to ask you, what would you like me to ask? Or what is it that you wish people would ask you? What do you want us to know? We'll turn this around.
Yeah, I want somebody to ask me, what do I do for fun? Because most people who do this, what's going on behind me, do it as a hobby. I mean, that is what they do, but this has been my job. This has been my job for 40 years. And so I wanted to find a hobby. And I know that sounds really bizarre. So I actually, a number of years ago, picked up playing the recorder. It was cheap, and I already knew I had enough piano background to know how to read music. So I had a friend and we started playing together, and I ended up becoming involved in a couple of consorts, which of course COVID killed all that. But what I loved about playing music was first of all, it was a huge learning curve for me because I am a solo operation. Everything that I do alone. I have complete control over. Even in a classroom, there is a control over my students to make sure they come out with a happy ending. But when you play music in a consort, you are not a solo operation by any stretch. You have to listen to everybody else, match pitch, and you have to play as a unit. I've never done that. And it was so hard for me to learn. No. And the other thing, and you're going to laugh at this, is that when I screw up, and I'll tell you I do that often. So I make mistakes. Yeah, I do. But I can take them out. It's cloth. I can cut it. I can take the seam apart. I just broke a warp thread here and went back to, I can fix anything. In music, when you are playing, especially in live or even in a rehearsal, you can't say, oh, wait, so I made a mistake on that note. Could we go back? No, you cannot even in your head acknowledge that you just made a mistake, because if you do, you will drop out and lose your place and never recover. At least I wasn't skilled enough to. And so I had to learn that mistake is gone. And you cannot redo. And those were super hard for me. The other thing that I absolutely love, and again, COVID killed it for a while, but it's coming back, is that I love to volunteer at the costume shop at the local Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey. It's an incredible costume shop. And I'm just a stitcher. I am just a stitcher. And I love that. I go in, I look at the list. You need that jacket altered. You need this fixed. You need that let out 4 sizes. You need this taken in 4 sizes. You need all these buttons to come off, close up the buttonholes, put snaps behind it for a quick release, whatever. And the interesting thing there is that I don't have to make any decisions. I just do what I'm told. And everything that you do in costume alteration has to be able to be undone, because the next actor coming along might be 3 sizes different. And so I can't trim away. I can't make, it has to look perfect from the 4th row. And, those are things that take my skill set and stretch them past my imagination. So thanks for giving me the opportunity that I actually have hobbies.
Who knew?
Who knew? and they aren't fiber.
Well, this next question kind of goes along with that. We'll make this brief because I want you to have time to talk.
Questions,
or answer the questions. But your resume is very impressive, the things that you have done. So this is magic time and soup. You can do anything you want. There's no time limit. There's no money limit. Completely magical thinking. If you could do anything, what would be the next thing you would do?
When you had presented this question to me initially, it didn't take me long to fill it in, because if I had answered this question 10, 15 years ago, the one thing missing on my resume is that I always wished I had been able to get an MFA. There was never the money, I would have loved to have had an MFA. Huh. I have a BA in fine arts. Back then, there wasn't even a BFA. So I would have loved to have had an MFA. But it just never fit in with my lifestyle. And an MFA is really expensive. And what would it have netted me? The ability to teaching. It would have been a personal, I knew I could, but I had kids I was raising, and it didn't make sense. And now I'm in that position. I have the money and I have plenty of time, but the appeal of it is gone. And it is the one thing that's missing off my resume. But I don't care anymore, because somebody last night when they were introducing me for this class said, your resume is 8 pages long. Yeah, I know. And that doesn't even include all the years that I did craft fairs. But travel, I loved, Peters Valley does this travel program. I've been to Morocco, I've been to Cuba, and I was supposed to go to Japan. And that has been postponed now twice, as a craft tour. And I'd love to do that once a year and really explore other cultures and their crafts. But of course, COVID killed that. That will again come back. But I'm really happy at the moment with where I am. And just, I want this to be a hobby. I want to see what happens if. I just want to play and not have, now I have to size this for my classes. I have to do that. I just want to explore and play and see where it takes me. And I also if you had asked me this last year, I would have said, I really want to learn all the things, like I took a class at Peters Valley and forged fibers basketry. So my daughter and I went through the property, and the vines and I have our wood shop is in the back, and the entire thing is filled with hanging stuff that's all drying to make basketry out of. And I haven't done it because I'm in here making clothing because that's what makes me happy. So, I don't need to learn all the things. I don't need to, I'm just really happy right now. And like when people ask me when I was in college, what do I want to do with this degree? But look where it got me.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm not, we'll stay tuned. We'll find out.
Well, then that's my next question. What really is next for you? Book, movie, theater?
Well, I did the videos, there's 75 of them. So that's a lot of binge watching.
All right.
And, and I often thought that I would like to write a book, but that is so tedious. And, and I do have monographs. Shameless commercial announcement, but I've had monographs for years on sewing hand wovens and warping front to back, because I'm a front to back warper, and ankle weaving techniques. They're all on my website. Color, I do a whole class in color. But those, they're there, buy the digital, it's cheap. And I thought about, should I write the comprehensive book on sewing with hand wovens? I don't know that I have anything in me. A friend of mine said to me, I hope she's watching, she knows who she is, I can do anything. I can't do everything, and nor do I want to. And I've left the 75 videos. We will, and for those of you who are asking, there will be more videos, but right now, between the shoulder and my daughter is trying to finish up this degree and I was like, get a life outside of, this household. She works for me. She lives with me. It's too much. It's time now for her to go be employed outside the house. She has an animal science degree. This latest course will give her a tech license, and and she needs a group of people that are not me, and she'll be fine, but it's WA back to front just popped up. Yeah, no, I'm front to back. I'm a front to back. I've been for years and years. That works perfectly for me. And so what's next? I'm really, I don't know. I'm gonna eat my popcorn and drink my wine and see.
Well, let's have some questions. We have a ton. We're not going to get to all of them, but we'll get to as many as we can. Several people have asked about the shirt you're wearing.
Oh, it's actually not a shirt. It's actually a dress. It's a little snug because of COVID, but this is all hand-dyed silk, and it's a sort of a bat wingy thing, but there's a diagonal slice where the miters come together. And I had often thought about creating this in all the sizes and generating things, but I may at some point. But I love this because it feels really nice. It's all raw silk, and they're all the yarns are hand dyed.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy Broughton wants to know, what was your biggest blooper? The thing that you thought was a great idea, but it didn't work out. Why didn't it? And what did you do from there? Great question. Way to go, Kathy.
Actually, my biggest blooper is how I started doing handwoven clothing in craft fairs. This was a make or break moment for me. Very few people know the story, and I'll try to be really succinct because I know we're running out of time. But so back when I was working for somebody else as a production weaver, they had brought a lace curtain that they had picked up at a craft fair, or lace, or it was a lace panel shawl or something. And they said, because I was weaving mohair for them, and they said, is this something you think you could do? And I looked at it, and I knew how to do dupe lino. Someone had taught me. And that's a process where the loom will actually switch the places. I wrote a whole article for Heddlecraft in this process a couple of years ago. So dupe lino, I knew, and I looked at this, and this lace, the threads were twisting. I said, I think I can replicate this. And she said, this customer wants it in curtain panels, 4 identical curtain panels. So I thought I could do that. Well, of course, you say yes, then worry. And so I ended up, she sent me the yarn, and I ended up weaving the panels. And when I was finished, they had headers, and one panel was an inch too short. And I remember just, the devastation of I had screwed up, and I had screwed up on somebody else's dime, and I had to make this right. So I personally reinvested in all the yarn and rewove the commission, one piece to match the missing panel of the right size, and then 3 others just because I was going to have these curtains, which didn't fit my windows, but this was because, the problem is the yarns were on big cones. It's not like I can order a couple ounces of each to fill in the missing one. So I ended up with these 4 lace panels that didn't fit my windows. And somebody said, well, I could put them in my craft fair booth as, shawls, which is probably, but then that also duplicated. I think this was purchased at a craft fair. That wouldn't be really cool. But somebody said to me, and nobody to this day remember who it was, a family member, or whatever, said, why don't you cut a hole in the neck and make it into a tunic? And that's how I switched from craft fairs where I was doing placemats and Afghans, because that's what we called them, and wall hangings, and to clothing. I didn't initially do clothing and craft fairs because I knew too much. It was like, I couldn't see how to make, that into, anyway. So this is how I started doing. It was a total screw up that changed the trajectory of how I work. So nobody's ever heard that story.
Way to go, Kathy.
Yeah.
Good question. Good job. Great story. Okay. So a couple of people are asking, what is the best loom for doing yardage? Somebody else is saying they want to get started. What should they get? What do you think?
Any loom will work. I mean, I got 40 looms back here, like
Choose
literally.
one.
Okay. 20 of them are Structos, which I had for teaching purposes, but you can see, I mean, I just got a ton now. And my love was Tools of the Trade loom. It was my first loom. I happen to like them, and they find me. And this latest one that just came here, this 12 shaft, somebody told me, the person we bought it from told me it was originally Denise Kovenat's. And I don't know if Denise, if you're watching, but this is a 54-inch 12 shaft Tools of the Trade. I don't know if that's true, but this is a heavy loom. But my daughter was thrilled, because she's a big girl. She can handle it. Anyway, any loom that you can get a shed on, you can produce yardage. Here's the thing for clothing. Clothing has seams. I've made a gorgeous dress that got second place at the Long Beach Convergence out of 9-inch wide scarves. It is not about the loom. It is about a dense enough set to support construction details. And, and I have a couple of the early videos really talk about, that early weaving part, but any loom that you can get a shed on. I mean, I happen to like 8 shaft because I can do some cool stuff with putting side-by-side structures, but this is a twill. It's just a color and weave twill, and on 4 shafts, it's not a big deal. And if it's not wide enough, somewhere in here, there's a secret seam because it wasn't wide enough. And I think it's right here. There's a seam. You would never know. And I have 2 whole videos on what to do when you don't have enough fabric and how to cheat. And so the loom is, I mean, I have a Maycumber that just kind of came to me, and I will tell you, this is sort of funny because all these floor looms here are all Tools of the Trade. This Maycumber over here came to me. It was very sick. I restored it because it was a loom. I thought it was an 8 shaft narrow one, so it had a purpose for me, and I spent a lot of money restoring it. When I brought this in here, these looms threw a fit. I swear to you, the tension in the studio was palpable. Even my daughter came in. She was like, whoa. And so to finish that story out, so I knew that the guy who made Tools of the Trade looms had made a 12 shaft. I'd always wanted one just because I did. I didn't really need it. And so the week that this Maycumber came in, limping, it was in bad shape. I got a letter from somebody, because if you Google Tools of the Trade loom, my name pops up, oddly enough. So this woman who said, I have this Tools of the Trade loom I want to sell, and I wanted to know how much it's worth. It's 12 shaft. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I'm typing, and I'm like, how wide is it? She went 54 inches. And I'm like, I can't fit a 54-inch loom. So I showed the text string to my daughter, and the woman was in Rochester, New York. And I said, and she says to me, she starts Googling, that's 4.5 hours. I can do this. She loaded the trailer and she drove to Rochester. I bought the loom from the woman for what I thought was an incredibly fair price. And, you know, she was happy to sell it to me for that. And my daughter brought it all back here to Jersey. And this is the first warp on it. I've had it about 10 months. But you know, once this loom came in, it was like the rest of them said, we're going to make sure there is not an inch of floor space for her to ever do this to us again. So yeah, and the loom is, you know, Maycombers do have a great shed, but they're cumbersome and clunky, and, you know, it's never been my favorite. Sorry guys, but you know, but I like wood, you know, and as long as you get a decent shed, any loom will work.
That's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
It's really about the cloth.
Michaela's asking about the study group. She wants to know if that's online and can people join it. Do you know which one? I mean, do you know actual information about the study group that's using your patterns and stuff that you talked about?
Oh, no, I mean, it was a specific guild. I think it was the one on Whidbey Island. And I think there might've been another one in California that I think, so, but yeah, no, I mean, they're like in-person guilds. It's not an online group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Michaela, jump in there. Start.
Well, talk to your guild, you know,
start,
I mean, start a clothing study group. You know, people will sit and watch popcorn and watch my videos, eat popcorn and watch my videos. And you're like, and, you know, and all how to make the garments. They're all video supported. So, and just as I think I am in the middle of indexing my videos. I'm paying somebody to help me with this, but we're trying to index 75 videos so that about 30% is done there on my website, the index. I haven't made a big deal out of it yet because it's only about 30% done, but you know, there will be an index so that you can go and find what you need without looking at 75 videos.
A lot of the questions, I'm going to tell you, I'll go to her videos.
Yes.
They're asking technical questions.
Yes.
Like,
that's why I did it.
To her videos.
So I don't ever have to say how to cut your fabric. Go to the video.
Somebody's asking about neck. Go to the video. How many yards do you weave at a time usually? I think you've talked about this, but
yeah, typically, I mean, I have a 10-yard warping mill. So, you know, the tabletop thing, I typically put anywhere from 7 to 10 yards on, depending on what yarn I have, how much I have, you know, because once you've sampled and once I've washed it and, you know, loom take up and all that, I mean, if I end up netting, you know, 6, 7, I don't know what I'm going to do with. That's the point. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this fabric. So I just want enough to do what I want. And if there isn't enough, then I go to plan B and figure it out. We have a pretty big alphabet. So yeah.
That's another sign. I come up with signs when I do
yeah, plan B, plan C. Okay, that didn't work.
By the way, we have a really big alphabet. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, Daryl, I can't believe we got to stop. This has been so much fun. I knew it would be. You really need to come out of your shell, woman. I think
I'll work on that
so much. A lot of people are saying they hope your arm gets better, and I do too. We all hope.
I will report that, yes, I've crossed a bridge, and I mean, even though I don't have complete rotation, I can weave. I mean, there's a lot of things I can do. I mean, the shoulder hurts because the bone broke, but I am much more functional than I was last month. I'm not in tears all the time, and you know, and my PT guy is really happy, and my ortho guy is really happy. So, you know, I am on the mend.
Good. Well, I encourage you all to go to Daryl's website. She's incredibly generous with all her information. It's DarylLancaster.com. Very simple. The videos are amazing. Her digital downloads are there for the taking. Go check it out. And again, those of you who are asking all these questions, go to her videos and you will find it there. I do want to thank our sponsor, Grace Tully. Bless your heart, Grace, for sponsoring this. And you sponsored a good one. And I called her today and said, do you want a picture? And she was absolutely no. But she did tell me, and made me realize how much I knew I liked this woman. She had blue hair, so she thought that would be interesting. And I would have too, but she said no. But she's very kind and very supportive of HGA and Textiles and Tea. And we do appreciate your sponsorship, Grace. If you want to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your business or your guild, please go to our website at weavespindye.org. The information is there on how to sponsor another episode of Textiles and Tea. If you want to see more programming like this, or some of the programming we've done recently, it's just been wonderful. The Careers in Textiles was amazing. You can still sign up for that and watch the recordings. I was surprised how much I learned. I thought I knew a lot until I watched this program. It was wonderful. If you know somebody who's interested into going into textiles as a career, you and them, they both need to watch this. Excellent. But if you want to see more programming like that, please support HGA either by donating or becoming a member, or both, at weavespindye.org. We also have some, if you've missed some of the episodes, please, you can watch them on Facebook. If you want to watch them with a friend, watch it again. Probably want to watch this one again. They're on Facebook, and we are also uploading them to YouTube as we can. We have some upcoming deadlines. We've got Small Expressions is March 29th. You still got time. Again, it's such a fabulous experience to have a piece of work in one of these exhibits that converges. Jump on that. April 1st is a COE registration deadline. If you've been working on that, heads up, that registration deadline's coming up. Next week, we have Alice Schlein, who's going to be our guest. I am so excited. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you again, Daryl. It's been so much fun. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy tea.